Hello and welcome to Canada Footy TV. My name is Ryan May, here for CFTV's women's national soccer team, Arnold Clark Cup build-up Squaretable. Joined by my partner in crime and footy, as always, Samir Murji. And you better get used to seeing him around here. It's our resident sad Arsenal fan, but happy Canada fan, Owen Hall. How are you doing today, boys?
Doing great as always, and no complaints from me. How about you, Owen?
Not too bad, not too bad. I feel like a second time on here. I feel like a new January signing here for this podcast. But
You're Luis Diaz.
More than happy to be back.
No, he's not Luis Diaz. He's a much better signing than that.
Okay, so we are here to talk about the Arnold Clark Cup. Now, the Arnold Clark Cup is a new competition. It is in its first year. Previously, Canada around this time would have been playing in the She Believes tournament, but this year they are not. They are in England to take on three Tier 1 nations in the Arnold Clark Cup. They are going to be playing on February 17th at 2:30 against England in Middlesbrough, and that's going to be at the Riverside Stadium. That's the one we're sort of focused on here today, although we are just going to kind of build up this whole tournament as a whole to start. The next game is February 20th at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. That one's going to be against Germany at Norwich's Stadium, Carrow Road. And then on February 23rd at 9:30 a.m., bright and early Eastern Time, they will be taking on Spain in Wolverhampton at the Molineux. Which of these three games are you most excited for, Owen?
I think it's got to be the England game for sure. It's a great way to sort of open up the tournament. I think for both these teams, I believe, and it's a great matchup of two nations that are definitely powerhouses of the sport, both in terms of women's and starting to be in terms of men's. And it's definitely a great platform playing on all these major stadiums for a lot of these teams. It's a great platform for them to play in, and the tournament's a great platform as well. A little bit of a we're having a little bit of break in terms of women's tournaments. Won't have a World Cup until 2023, so this is a great sort of great something to have in between these major tournaments to see where these teams are at competitively for sure.
The English match is definitely a great shout out. I mean, of course, they're the home team, so the crowd's going to be electric. But I'm really looking at this match against Germany. They're currently number 3 ranked in the world, and it's going to be a tough test for Canada. Not only that, Canada wants to use this tournament as a way for them to see where they're at, to see what they can add, to see if any of these new players, I mean, they're bringing a lot of new players to this tournament, to see if any of these new players can make a difference. So it's going to be interesting to see those players up against the best opposition in the world, and Germany's the best team, at least in the FIFA rankings, at this tournament.
Yes, most definitely they are.
So it's going to be a great game, of course.
I'm very much looking forward to the Germany game as well, although being a little bit biased, I always like to watch Canada and England play each other. It brings the best sides of me all together, and there's nothing I love more than a Canada-England matchup in whatever it may be, sports-wise. And speaking of platforms, TSN has the national rights for these games. So if any of you guys want to catch any of them, again, February 17th, 2:30, February 20th, 3:15, February 23rd, 9:30 a.m., all of them on the sports network, TSN, in Canada. It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing to say that point. I mean, growing up, we would never have seen a competition this small be on national television, right? Like, it is a relatively small competition.
As far as marketing goes, it 100%
especially in the women's game. You have the World Cup, you have the Olympics, and and a lot of times the Olympics is considered bigger than the World Cup just in terms of the women's game at least. But definitely great platform to have it on TSN.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it on national television. And I mean, before we get into like the actual tournament, because I know we're about to step into that, for me, what's exciting is we just saw this team win gold in the summer or at the Tokyo Olympics. And I'm just excited to see how much they've improved since then, with the confidence getting from being, quote unquote, the best in the world.
Although the rankings still don't have them there, that being said.
But they do have them at number 6. And that is a fairly good and fair ranking, I would say. Yeah. Considering, the Olympics, it is one tournament. But I'm excited to see how they've improved. I'm excited to see them play. And I think that this is going to be a huge test to see how we match up against the top teams in the world.
When I mean, you can't always trust the FIFA rankings. Belgium is top. I believe Belgium is top of the FIFA rank in terms of men's right now, and they haven't really done much in any sort of international tournament. But what's really interesting is that I think Germany's going to be one of those teams that actually weren't at the Olympics, and we're
Yes.
talking about this being a measuring stick for how good Canada is. Germany's saying, "Well, hold on a second, we weren't even at these Olympics," and I believe there was an article that came out by a writer, by an American writer, that said, "Are these Olympics too small for the U.S. women's national team?" And she got absolutely lambasted on Twitter. She was getting all those replies, all those quote tweets. But the article itself was actually addressing the qualification system about this women's Olympic tournament. And there were so many teams missing. The Germans were missing, the French were missing. And I believe at the time, those were the second and third ranked teams in the world. So a few of these teams are going to be coming into this tournament and saying, we didn't even have a chance at these Olympics, and they'll be coming out to prove that they're the part of the elite in the women's game as well.
Well, they were invited to this tournament, which is first of all a good sign for the German team. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the first time we're going to see them against Germany. So matching them up against these top nations is the only way we're going to get that sort of measuring stick situation. The Arnold Clark Cup, I just want to sort of compare it to the She Believes tournament here just for a second. The level of the competition is totally different. Iceland, New Zealand, USA, and Czechia are the 4 teams in the She Believes Cup. Canada, Germany, Spain, and England, as we've already mentioned. Is Canada poised to stay in this with the development of this soccer culture that we have brewing in Canada, in part thanks to the men's team, in part thanks to the women's team literally being the gold medal champions? Are they poised to stay here? Is Canada now a footballing powerhouse, in at least on the women's side?
Well, in terms of the women's, they've been here for a while. I mean, ever since John Herdman has come into the setup, I remember looking back to 2012. The Canada played the U.S. at Old Trafford in an absolute classic of a game. And I remember looking back on that game, there were some questionable refereeing calls, but that's a story for another day. Canada have been competing at this level for essentially a decade now, going back to those 2012 Olympics where they won a bronze there, and I think they won a bronze in Rio as well.
They did.
And they've been here for a long time. In terms of the women's side of the game, they've been here for a while. And what's even more amazing is that a lot of these other nations have recognized women's leagues. Canada does not. A lot of these other players are out playing in Ligue 1. They're playing in the U.S., and it's amazing the development of these players. The fact that there is no major professional league here in Canada is amazing to see, especially where these Canadian women are at, winning gold medals, competing in World Cups. It's great to see, and it's just a testament to how good this setup is through John Herdman, and how it's continued to grow after he's gone.
Yeah, you're right, Owen. They've been here for a decade now. It's probably not fair to say, are they now into this sort of upper echelon? They have been in the upper echelon. I guess more what I actually meant to say was...
The absolute disrespect. Disrespect.
Really, what I really meant to say is that we consider nations like England, nations like Spain, nations like France as footballing elite.
I see
what I
you're
meant to say is Canada are there. I believe they're there at the very least on the women's side, and hopefully overall we'll be there down the line. All right, let's put a wrap on that, and we're going to move on to the squad for this tournament. And obviously the big news is Christine Sinclair is not going to be taking part after a family situation. One of her family members passed away. I believe it was her mother, and she is going to sort of be with her family. Very justifiable. But what that means for the Canadian national team is that they do not have their best ever player. So what happens? What do you think happens here, Owen?
I mean, Canada's got options. Canada has lots of options.
What's the best one?
And of course, we've got to talk about Jordan Huitema, who's actually been in the squad. She's still very young, but she's been in the squad for a while now, has a great eye for goal. She's at PSG. But I mean, this team doesn't really necessarily need that talisman or taliswoman, I should say, to grab the goals. they're so solid everywhere. When you have players like Khadijah Buchanan, Jesse Fleming, who are all applying their trade in some of the greatest teams in Europe. I don't think a lot of people talk about, but Olympic Lyon is an absolute dynasty when it comes to the women's game, and Khadijah Buchanan applying her trade there. But Canada has options, and I don't even think they necessarily need that, like I said, major goal scorer to get through this tournament. And I think they can rely on other players like Jesse Fleming, sort of get through this tournament, some goals scoring from midfield, and I think they should be okay.
I'm glad you brought up Jessie Fleming. She is actually going to be captaining England again. Captaining England, rather. She is not going to be captaining England. I would like to take that statement back. She is going to be captaining Canada against England, and that should be a really great opportunity for her. So I just before I take your point, Samir, hold on to it. Keep your mouth closed for just a second, and we're gonna run through the actual roster. So I'm just gonna list you everyone. We have for the goalkeepers, we got Sabrina D'Angelo, Devin Kerr, Aaron McLeod, Kaylin Sheridan. In the center of the park in defense, Khadijah Buchanan, Vanessa Gillies, and Shalina Zadorsky. Only 3 center backs there, but
4 goalkeepers, 3 center backs.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little bit of an
choice.
interesting squad composition, but I assume they pretty much have a steady 4-4-2 type thing they're gonna plan on running with, and those 3 center backs will just sort of rotate their way in. Fullbacks, we have Gabrielle Carl, Alicia Chapman, Jade Riviere, and Sura Yeka. All of them will be listed as fullbacks. Marie Yasmin Alidou Danjou, Jessie Fleming, Julia Grosso, Ashley Lawrence, Victoria Pickett, Quinn, Sophie Schmidt, and Desiree Scott make up the midfield marshals. And the forward group, Janine Becky, Tanya Boychuk, Jordan Heidema, sorry about that, Chloe Lacasse, Nichelle Prince, and Deanne Rose. So,
Solid.
it's a solid squad. There is a very interesting situation with that center back, with those only having 3 center backs. Quite a small number for an international tournament. I've never seen an international tournament with an international squad roster with that few center backs. That being said, probably not going to be a major actual issue. There's only 3 games.
Khadijah Buchanan basically makes up 2 center backs, so it's okay.
Well, Ryan, before we start talking about the squad list, what I wanted to bring up was a new face in the squad, Tanya Boychuk. She plays striker, and the 21-year-old has been killing it at the University of Memphis. I mean, last year she led the team in goals. She had 6 goals scored and 4 assists, and Canada will be looking for her to fill that void that Christine Sinclair, that they're missing without Christine Sinclair, right? They need someone to score those goals in important moments, and Canada's going to be using this tournament to prepare this squad for what's coming up, and to prepare this squad to see if they can match up well against the best teams.
Well, this is the kind of tournament where, as we've already mentioned, they've been having a decade of success now. So this is the kind of tournament where you want to start to blood those new young players in, develop a sort of plan for the future. Because as we've seen, Stephanie Labbe is retired. There's not necessarily a firm set goalkeeper situation going on, and Christine Sinclair is well on the back 9. Whether we like, which we don't like it. It's not even a debate. But we don't like that she's on the back 9, but she is. And it's these kind of tournaments, while not necessarily being the biggest draw for fans, for casual fans, for hardcore fans, this is where you get to see these players. This is where we get to see the future of Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously hard to see the GOAT go. Christine Sinclair, all-time leading goal scorer in women's football, or soccer, I should say. Or, no, I shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
Yeah,
Don't correct yourself.
I should say football.
This is Canada Footy TV. This sport is called football.
It
I don't
is,
know.
it
I don't
is.
know what we're on over here in North America.
It is.
But we're on the wrong thing.
We have our own football over here. That's
it's
why.
wrong. They mostly use their hands.
Hand egg.
Hand egg. Yeah, that's North American hand egg and football.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about Jessie Fleming. And yeah, she plays for Chelsea, not my favorite club in the world, obviously. But she's someone who will be getting the captain's armband and has plenty of caps. She has 94. She's getting up there in terms of some of the legends in Canadian soccer with Christine Sinclair, Sophie Schmidt, all great talents for this team. And I think she'll be a standout in this tournament, as she should be. One of the more talented players in the squad, great on the ball, and can score in big moments. And like I was talking about earlier, you don't necessarily need that many goals to win in these tournaments. I mean,
No.
we've seen teams kind of go through both men's and women's, like the Canadian women's did at the Olympics, not score too many goals. But it doesn't matter. In tournament football, as long as you go and win these games, that's all that matters. We've seen Portugal win a Euros without winning a game in the group stage.
Samir literally brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canada
Yeah.
at the Tokyo Olympics,
Yeah.
they only scored more than one goal one time.
We saw Egypt nearly win AFCON, and through most of their games, they just
They couldn't score.
slid through penalties, and that's all they needed. And Canada kind of did the same at the Olympics too. So I mean, again, I'm just happy to see this tournament. Should be a great measuring stick for some of the talent in women's football, and I can't wait.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Owen, because to add to your point on Canada struggling against the top teams, historically Canada has really struggled against Europe. They just have one single victory in its previous 8 matches against European nations in the World Cup, the Women's World Cup,
Okay.
dating back to 2007.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's a terrible record
That is
against
a really,
European
really
teams.
rough record against you.
So-
But it could be argued that they have not had that many chances to play them outside of those
Well, they
actual games.
had 8 chances and they
But they were
Only
no,
won
no,
once.
But those games were at the World Cup. Yes,
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so outside of the World Cup, as we've seen, they've pretty much played in the She Believes Cup around this time of year. And they ain't playing any of those guys in that tournament.
Yeah, but that exactly adds to like Owen's point there, where it's like they need to use this as a measuring stick against the better teams because all 3 teams in this cup that they're playing are European, right? So they are kind of similar to the amount of level that they're going to be playing when it comes to the World Cup. And that being said, the next year's World Cup will expand from 24 teams to 32 for the first time ever,
Yeah.
and it'll feature at least 11 European teams. So Canada really needs to exercise these demons against European teams, and this is a good starting point.
It is. So the next thing I sort of want to talk about is the 2023 World Cup itself.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but that 2023 World Cup and the 2024 Olympics, the qualifiers are going to be this summer's CONCACAF Championship for
Mhm.
both of those events. That is it. There will be no games against anybody outside of CONCACAF. It will literally be only those games.
I hate that.
What is wrong with this system?
I think it just comes down to resources. And like I said, I mentioned that that article coming into the last Olympics. I think it's just a matter of resources. They're willing to put these resources in for Olympic qualifiers for the men's. There's a very large World Cup qualifying system for the men's as well.
Huge.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of resources. If they wanted to make these games, they probably could. But again, I don't think there's enough of a want from FIFA and CONCACAF and these governing bodies to put on these games, but there really should. And I feel like if they played some of these games at BMO and they brought more qualifying games, especially with the attention that the men's team is getting, if they
Yep.
brought some of these women's games into these cities, I feel like there would be a good amount of attendance and people would recognize them. And like, I feel like these qualifying games will probably get more viewership than these tournaments like She Believes, because like people know what's on the line. Like, a lot of people don't really recognize these tournaments. That's probably just down to branding and
yeah,
there's
there's not been a huge amount of marketing.
Yeah.
I have
money
no
put
doubt
into
that
this.
stadiums would sell out, like you had mentioned, in Canada for
The
these home
quality
games.
of the actual quality of the football is so high.
Yeah, and forget the quality of the football. Like Canada's women's team is a really good team. They have been successful, and Canada backs them. Like I feel like Canadian fans have been here backing the women's team. Maybe not the men's team as much, but we have backed the women's team for a while, probably because we've seen success.
Mhm.
And it's frustrating that it's all down to one tournament. I think it's really unfair that instead of having like different periods throughout the year where you have like a couple weeks in the international break to qualify, it's all down to 1 month. Like let's say someone gets hurt, let's say someone is sick, let's say there's a family emergency and someone like Christine Sinclair can't be there for the qualifying. I mean, she might be there coming in the summer, but it's just an example, right? Like I think it's completely unfair to have it based off of just one tournament where team could be out of form, injuries could happen, travel's an issue, coming from clubs. Maybe some clubs might not let players play, etc., etc.
The most amazing part is that in Europe, international breaks are kind of seen as like a boring period. Everyone wants to go back to their club football, especially for club football fans. But here in North America, especially for the women's game, the international game takes precedent over the women's club football. There's not a lot of followers of women's club football here in North America, and the WSL is getting bigger, and there are a lot of talented teams across Europe. But especially here, there's far more recognition, both here and the States, there's far more recognition for the international football game when it comes to women. And I don't know why they wouldn't take advantage of that. I don't know why.
It seems like the big TV networks are running behind the times. There's no other way of putting it. It doesn't make any sense to not be marketing these games because there are people that want to watch them, and those people are vast in numbers. We've seen how Canadian fans react to winning teams. Okay, and just as we begin to wrap up the show here, we are going to do a short little preview of England, Canada. We love it. I love it, maybe more than you guys. But either way, I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Samir, what are the odds looking like for this game?
Well, believe it or not, the odds makers do not agree with anything that we've said for the past 20 minutes.
Oh, no.
That's good news.
The odds makers, it's refreshing for me. The odds makers say that England are heavily favorites to win at full time at 1.72 odds.
Interesting.
A draw is 3.2.
So the respect for the Canadians is just still not there.
And Canada win is a 4.5.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
what?
That's huge.
That is a huge underdog.
Saying,
I am slamming Canada on the money line.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would, or I'll take draw or Canada. I mean, like getting either or is
more
pretty
conservative.
Good. Being a little conservative
also
there.
For the best.
But pretty much what that means is that they think that Canada's in a bit of a mess right now. Missing Labe because she retired. We don't have a number one goalkeeper. Missing our captain, Christine Sinclair. Having a bunch of new faces into the squad. The odds makers are pretty much setting it at this because they don't think Canada will perform that well in the first game of the tournament, which is a fair assumption considering we're going to have some new faces. But, I mean, I'm backing Canada to win this game.
Are the odds makers considering that the last two matches Canada have played against England resulted in Canadian wins, 2-0 to Canada in 2021 and 1-0 to Canada in 2019.
Exactly.
Before that, they didn't play each other for 4 years, and England beat Canada 2-1. I don't think there's anything like historically to suggest England are significantly better than this Canadian team.
I mean, I agree with you there, and keep in mind, Ryan, like I'm looking off Bet365 right now, and Bet365 is a European.
No free advertising, sorry.
Use any betting gambling site you want, but Bet365 is a European-based company, so maybe that has something to do with the odds. But usually odds are similar across the world, and maybe the people making the odds for soccer or football are European-based. That might be it. They just don't have faith in Canada.
All right, thank you, Samir Moneyline Murji, for your moneyline information for us. And I want to get score predictions as we go around the horn here. Owen, what's the score in England? Canada versus England. Canada are the home team in England.
Yeah, kind of weird.
Weird, but
Very
it is
weird.
what it is. They're also the home team in England against Germany. And then the away team in England against Spain. Who cares? Fun stuff.
I think we'll take a 1-1 draw. A little bit of lack of firepower up front for Canada. Interesting story coming out of the England women's camp, though. Leah Williamson, Arsenal player, of course. There are a lot of really, really great Arsenal players in that women's team. She's coming in as captain. There's been a lot of hoopla of her becoming the captain, and I think that might reinvigorate the squad a little bit. And I see them coming out hot, but I think Canada also has some talent as well. 1-1 draw. That's my prediction. Don't put me on the line for any bets. I wasn't responsible for anything.
I hate that you chose 1-1 draw because that was my exact prediction.
No,
but I'm gonna go a little off here. Canada's getting the W, 2-1 win, late goal scored, and Canada wins 2-1.
I also think Canada's getting the W. I also think they're going to score a late goal. I think it's going to be 1-0 though. I think they're going to be still resolute at the back. Miss Buchanan, she is two defenders, as we have already very clearly established, and it's going to be a fun ride at the Arnold Clark Cup. We will be back here. Maybe the three of us, maybe just two of us, maybe a combination of three of us plus another person. We will be bringing you fan-focused Arnold Clark Cup content, a post-match after every game, and a recap at the end of the tournament. And then we're building up to a massive men's international window at the end of March. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for checking out this Arnold Clark Cup Roundup Squaretable. For Samir Murji, Owen Hall, I'm Ryan May for Canada Footy TV.